child care, universal pre-K, universal college, and cancel student loan debt for about 95% of our students. That's how you restructure an economy to work not just for those at the top, but for everyone. So I think we got, one more quick question. Yes, sir. I know. Yep. Yep. So let me do this one quick. I know a lot of folks are cold out here. Said he hadn't heard much about foreign policy. Let me start with a really deep and thoughtful point about foreign policy, and that is I don't believe in foreign policy by tweet. Here's a second big one. I think we should know the difference between our enemies and our friends, and that we should treat our friends better than we treat our enemies. We need to be cautious with our enemies, and we need to investigate when hostile foreign governments attack our electoral system or otherwise come after us on cyber attacks. You raised the question about Israel-Palestine. I'm going to try to do this just really quickly. Israel is entitled to security. The Palestinians are entitled to dignity and self-determination. The best way for us to get there is make sure that we are pushing everyone toward a negotiated solution. It is not up to us to dictate the terms, but it is up to us to be a good friend by pushing in the direction to make sure that both of those objectives are met. So I hope that's helpful. Okay, so I hope I get to see you afterwards. I'll go in. I'll talk for a while. I don't know how long your lunch break is, but I'm glad you're here. And afterwards, I hope it works out that we can do some pictures and say hello to each other. Thank you all so much for being here. Yay, Tipton. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I didn't do that anyway.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I have important things to say.
Okay.
I've been a Democrat for 60 years. I've been active in Cedar County politics for over 40 years. This is my third time serving as a Cedar County Democratic chairman. And I have never been so worried about the future of our country as I am right now.
You're proud.
We have a democracy that's being threatened by our president and his Republican enablers.
Dear President.
We have a growing inequality of wealth and a lack of opportunity which threatens our social fabric. We have an environment which is desperately needing some attention, and we need to do something about that fast. Every one of you standing here today and sitting here today can add more items, more issues that are desperately in need of attention. We are facing a battle for the survival of our country, our democracy. And when you go into a battle, you want a fighter to lead you into that battle. For 25 years, Senator Warren has been leading that fight for consumers and for the common people. She has created, through her hard work, the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, which protects all of us. And all of this was done before she was even elected to the Senate. Since she's been in the Senate, she has continued that fight for all of us. So we are very fortunate to have a fighter on our side instead of what the Republicans have on their side. So, a couple of things, and then I'm going to turn this over to the person you want to hear from instead of me.
Sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
Facing long odds, nevertheless, she persisted. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Thank you. Thank you. You can see me back there. All right, let me get a box.
In the middle. In the middle.
There we go. We'll put it in the middle. Does that work? Better? Better. You can always tell a school teacher. I like to keep an eye on those in the back. I know everybody. Good. So let me start out by saying hello, Tipton. It is good to see you, and thank you, Larry. That's a very generous introduction. Boy, Larry hit it exactly right. This is a perilous time for our country, a really scary time. And the decisions that we make in 2020 will determine where this country goes for the rest of this century. I am grateful to every one of you for being here today, taking this seriously. We all recognize that what happens next in this country is going to come right through the center of Iowa. So thank you all for being here today. We got to make change in this country. I thought maybe what I would do is I tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit about what I'm fighting for in this race, and then we'll take as many questions as possible. Larry's going to be the moderator for that. And then afterwards, if anybody wants to stay and do a picture, we'll stay and do a picture. So I'm delighted to have a chance to do that too and get to shake some hands and say hello to folks. I grew up in Oklahoma, born and raised there. I am the baby in the family. I have 3 much older brothers. I am what used to be referred to as a late in life baby. My mom always just called me the surprise.
The best kind.
Yeah, the best kind. I have 3 older brothers, to this day referred to as the boys, because they were that collective. And all 3 of my brothers went off and joined the military. My oldest brother, Don Reed, spent about 5.5 years in combat in Vietnam. We were very lucky to get him back home. My second brother, John, was stationed overseas for a little over a year. My third brother, David, trained as a combat medic. Now, that also means a warning I issue to anyone who ever goes to Oklahoma. All 3 of my brothers are now retired. They all live in Oklahoma, fairly close to each other. Never choke around my brother David. To this day, he carries a sharpened pocket knife and he is sure he could perform an emergency tracheotomy. He's always ready. It makes for some very exciting Thanksgivings. Anyone goes, and we all just back out of the room. I love my brothers. I'm very close to all 3 of my brothers. When we were growing up, our daddy had a lot of different jobs. He sold carpeting, he sold fencing, he sold housewares. And by the time I was in middle school, the boys were all gone. It was just my mama and my daddy and me when my daddy had a massive heart attack. And we thought he was going to die. The neighbors brought covered dishes and he pulled through, but he couldn't go to work. And time goes by. We lost the family station wagon. At night, my mother would tuck me into bed, and then I'd hear them talk, and they thought I'd gone to sleep. And that's where, in middle school, I learned words like mortgage and foreclosure. And one day I walked into my folks' bedroom, and there on the bed was the dress. Some of you in this room will know the dress. It's the one that only comes out for weddings, funerals, and graduations. And my mother's in her slip and her stocking feet, and she's pacing and crying and looking off, and she's saying, "We will not lose this house. We will not lose this house. We will not lose this house." She was 50 years old. She had never worked outside the home, and she was truly terrified. And she kept looking at that dress and looks over at me and looks back at that dress. And finally, wipes her face, pulls the dress on, puts on her high heels, and she walks to the Sears and gets a full-time minimum wage job. And that minimum wage job saved our house, and it saved our family. And for many years, I thought that's the story my mama taught me. No matter how scared you are, no matter how hard it looks, when it comes down to it, you reach down deep, you find what you have to find, you pull it up, and you take care of the people you love. And it was only years later I came to understand it wasn't just my story. It was the story of millions of people across this country. People who, no matter how hard it is, no matter how scared they are, they reach down deep, they find what they need to find, they pull it up, and they take care of the people they love. And it was only years after that that I came to understand. It was also a story about government. Because when I was a girl, a minimum wage full-time job in America would support a family of 3. It would pay a mortgage, utilities, and put food on the table. Today, a full-time minimum wage job in America will not keep a mama and a baby out of poverty. That is wrong, and that is why I am in this fight. And understand this, that difference is not gravity or world events. It's about decisions made in Washington, D.C. by our government. When I was a girl, Congress asked one question about the minimum wage. What does it take a family of 3 to survive? To get a toehold in America's middle class? To get a place from which they might be able to build something going forward? Today, what Congress asks about the minimum wage is what's the right number to maximize the profits of giant multinational corporations. Well, I want a government that doesn't work for giant multinational corporations. I want a government that works for our families. So, I've known what I wanted to do since I was in 2nd grade. It's true. I know some of you didn't know until, gosh, like 3rd grade, 4th grade, some maybe even 5th grade, you know, those who are still weighing it. But I've known since 2nd grade. I wanted to be a public school teacher. Can we hear it for America's public school? I knew. And listen, I used to practice. Man, I'd line my dollies up. I'd teach my classes. You know, I was tough but fair. But by the time I graduated from high school, we didn't have the money for me at the college application, much less to send me off to 4 years of college. The boys had all gone into the military. That was their ticket to the middle class. Me, I wanted to be a teacher. That was going to mean 4 years of college. So unlike a lot of people, I have a kind of twisty path. I got a scholarship to college. Yay! And then at 19, I fell in love. Yay! And got married. Yay! To the first husband. Yay! And dropped out of school. And got a job answering phones. And I thought that would be my life, a good life, but not doing what I wanted to do. And then I found a commuter college that was 45 minutes away and cost $50 a semester. And that was my chance. I held on for dear life, finished my diploma, and I became a special needs teacher. I have lived my dream. For those of you who don't know about special needs teachers, let me just say, it's not a job, it's calling. I would probably still be doing it today, except, this is back in the day. By the end of the first year, I was visibly pregnant, and back then, the principal wished you luck, showed you the door, and hired someone else for the job. So there I was. I was at home with a baby, couldn't take a full-time job. I get this crazy idea that I'm going to head off to law school. And that's ultimately what I do. By the way, a public law school costs $450 a semester. Baby on hip, I haul off and go to law school. 3 years later, graduate from law school, visibly pregnant. You will discover a pattern to this. Baby number 2 on the way. I just kind of couldn't figure how this was all supposed to work. But anyway, baby number 2 on the way. I practiced law for about 45 minutes. And then went back to my first love, which is teaching. And taught in law school. I traded short ones for tall ones and taught all the money courses. That's what I've done. So it's been contract law and commercial law and corporate finance and bankruptcy law, all the parts that have money in it. But there was always one central question that I worked on, and that is, what's happening to working families in this country? Why is America's middle class being hollowed out? How is it that today in America, people who work every bit as hard as my mother worked, find the path so much rockier and so much steeper? And why is it that for people of color, it is even rockier and even steeper? And the answer is no accident. It loops right back to what I was talking about with minimum wage, a set of decisions made in Washington. I think of it this way. Who does our government in Washington work for? And here's the answer. It works great. Listen, it works fabulously for giant drug companies, just not for people trying to fill a prescription. It works great for giant financial institutions, just not for families trying to make it paycheck to paycheck without getting cheated. It works great for giant oil companies that want to drill everywhere, just not for the rest of us who are worried about climate change bearing down upon us. Or clean water. It works great for those with money and not for the rest of America. And when you have a government that works great for those who have money and not for the rest of America, that is corruption, plain and simple, and we need to call it out for what it is. And understand this about the corruption. Whatever brought you here today, whatever issue is the issue that gets you up in the morning, if there's a decision to be made in Washington, I guarantee it is influenced by money. By money. Think of it this way. Just to pick one example. Back in the 90s, we're beginning to understand the science of climate change. We don't have it right. We don't get all the implications, but we're beginning to understand that there's a problem there. You know what you see? Democrats and Republicans working together, trying to figure it out. Like I said, they're not perfect on how to do it, but they're working together. What can we do to avert a disaster that could be headed our way? And along come the Koch brothers. They make their money in fossil fuels, right? They make their money in carbon-based fuels. Along come the Koch brothers and the oil companies and some giant companies that want to be able to pump their filth into the air and into our water. They come along and they say, you know, if Congress gets really serious about making the changes we need to make to deal with climate change, that's going to cost us money. So they got some choices. How are they going to make their investments? Do they invest in how do we clean up and put more scrubbers and get the carbon out of the atmosphere and get filth out of the water? That's one thing they could do. Do they say, we better start making changes? Let's start shutting down the carbon-based fuel and taking our money and reinvesting it in clean and renewable power. No, they make a different investment. They decide to invest in politicians. They invest in Washington. They invest in the rule makers to keep the rules working in their favor. And how do they do it? It's obscene. They hire a bunch of bought and paid for experts to raise doubts about climate. Not because they really don't understand the science, But if you raise enough doubt, that means the politicians who are getting all the contributions, who are getting all the help, now have cover to be able to continue to do nothing, to continue to let this problem accelerate. And that's how it is that we are in a climate crisis that we should have been working on 25 years ago. It's corruption. So, here's the deal. We need to make change in this country. And not just little nibble changes. Not, okay, we've got one statute about this and one statute about that, and a couple of regulations back there, and it's all going to look different. We're going to sing a happy song and be done. We have to make big structural change in this country. Big change, structural. And the first place I believe we need to make that change is we need to attack corruption head on. Head on. You want to make other changes, you've got to start with the corruption. Now, the good news is I have the biggest anti-corruption plan since Watergate. The bad news is we need the biggest anti-corruption plan since Watergate. Okay, so it's big because there's a lot of different ways that money makes itself felt in Washington. So I'm just going to give you just a couple of flavors from it. One is end lobbying as we know it. Oh, I got another one. Block the revolving door between Wall Street and Washington. Work one place or the other, but not both. I've got one. Supreme Court. Make the Supreme Court follow basic rules of ethics. Conflicts, right? Come on. One more. Then I'll quit. Okay, one more. One more. Anyone who wants to run for federal office should have to put their tax returns online. We ought to be able to see it. Put them online. I've done it. All right. So, part one, attack corruption head on. Part two, we need to rewrite a couple of the basic rules in this economy. This is how we've gotten so out of whack. Larry was talking about how much inequality we've gotten. So here's a couple of proposals around this. The first one, we've got a problem right now with giant corporations that basically can just roll wherever they want to roll. They want to roll over their own employees, they do it. They roll over their customers, they roll over the communities where they're located. They just roll however they decide to roll. And that's going to keep happening until we get some balance back in this system, till we get some power to counteract that. And for me, that means more power in the hands of workers. We need to make it easier to join a union and give unions. Unions built America's middle class. Unions will rebuild America. Way to help restructure this economy. Let me give you a second one. I've proposed an ultra-millionaire's wealth tax. This is fun. Yeah, he already's read this. Okay. Here's the idea behind it, is to take the top 0.1% of fortunes in this country, all fortunes over $50 million. Okay, some of you may start looking nervous here. And to say your first 50 million, that's fine. But when you hit that 50 millionth and first dollar, you got to put in 2 cents for that dollar, and 2 cents for every dollar after that. And by the way, just so you understand the structure, anybody in here own a home? Yeah, you've been paying a wealth tax every year. It's just called a property tax. The only thing I want to do differently is I want to say, for that really thin slice at the top, the property tax is not only the real estate, it's also the yachts, the diamonds, and the Rembrandts. We just want to include all of it. Okay. So, 2 cent ultra-millionaires tax. And by the way, I want to make a point about this. It's not out of hatefulness or jealousy. It's saying you built a great fortune, you had a great idea, you were there at the right moment, you worked hard. or you inherited well. But either way, you have one of these great fortunes in America. Good for you. But keep in mind, that fortune was built using workers that all of us helped educate. That fortune was built getting your goods to market on roads and bridges all of us helped pay for. That fortune was built, protected by police and firefighters. All of us helped to pay for. And so the idea is you make it super duper big, really big. Put 2 cents back in so everybody else gets a chance to build something. That's all this is about. And here's what I want you to hear. 2 cents. What could we do with it? For the revenue that would produce, we could do universal child care, universal pre-K and pre-pre-K. We could raise the wages of all of the child care workers and pre-K teachers to professional levels, get them well trained, universal college, and cut student loan debt, end student loan debt for about 95% of our students, and still have $1 trillion. This is the opportunity for us, 2 cents out of the great fortunes. And this is the opportunity to invest again in America and the opportunity to invest in our future. So that's part 2. Restructure just a couple of the core rules in this economy. Third one is we've got to change the rules to protect our democracy. And my first one on this, we need a constitutional amendment to guarantee the right to vote to every American citizen and to get that vote counted. That's the core bedrock. We need to roll back every one of the voter suppression laws. It's not right. That's not how we build a democracy. And just one more in this. Overturn Citizens United. Democracy is not for sale. Just 3 things. That's all I want to do. I want to attack the corruption head on. I want to rewrite a couple of the structural rules in our economy. And I want us to do a better job of protecting our democracy. For me, all 3 of those things lead to the same basic notion of America. And that is, it's about building opportunity. Opportunity not just for those born into wealth, born into privilege, but opportunity for all of our kids. Opportunity to get a good education, starting at 0, to be able to get a good education. An opportunity to get a good job. An opportunity to start a small business. An opportunity to buy a home. An opportunity to start a family. An opportunity to move back to a small town. An opportunity. Remember, I'm a special needs teacher. Sometimes opportunity means a chance to be able to live independently. But it's an opportunity, not just for some, it's an opportunity for everyone. That's what I believe in, and that's what I believe we can build. Look, my daddy ended up as a janitor, but his baby daughter got that opportunity to become a public school teacher, to become a college professor, to become a United States Senator, and to become a candidate for President of the United States.
Thank you very much. What a great crowd we got. Now, we know you want to get involved because you came to see Senator Warren. So let's keep that involvement going. Get out here and let's make this thing happen. We got a fighter, so it's up to us to help fight. We're going to take about 3 questions. I'm going to start with Deb Vandergast right over here. I hand her the mic.
Deb?
I too am a special needs teacher, but for early childhood. I'm a registered nurse. I am the owner of Tipton Adaptive Daycare, which is privately owned because I chose not to go nonprofit because I would be giving up ownership and control of something I worked very hard to build, and my family has worked hard too. We're a small business, family owned.
Yep.
How does privately owned daycares and family daycare homes fit into your plan for universal child care if we don't have nonprofit status?
So, great question. What we're trying to do, and by the way, this is true on every part of the pieces I work for, is to get it down to the community level. If you're meeting standards of care, which you probably already do under state licensing laws, but we want to make sure, because that's a key part, that everybody is meeting standards of care. These can be home-based, they can be small community-based, they can be part of the town, they can be yours independently. We want to get that money down to the level where the children are taken care of. So if you're promising high-quality care, if you're willing to show the certifications for every part of that, then you're in. We're ready.
I want to see a living wage for my fantastic
Yep.
teachers.
And that's a core part of it. I appreciate what Deb's asking. Can I just say this one more time? I shot past it so quickly because there's so much to talk about. But when we talk about universal child care, partly it's about making sure money is available at the local level for every one of our babies to get first-rate care. Understand what this struggle means for parents right now across this country. In more than half the states in America, a year of care for a baby is more expensive than a year in the state university.
Wow.
And think what that means to mamas and daddies who can't finish their educations, can't go back to school, who can't take a job because the job ultimately doesn't pay enough, who can't take a promotion. This is holding us back. And the fact that daycare workers and early childhood educators get paid so little means there's enormous turnover in this area. We're not treating it like the profession it is. So, this is what we can do with 2 cents. We can put enough money in that every child can get high quality child care and every child care worker can get a good professional wage for doing this work. That's how we take care of our
Okay, we're gonna take 2 more questions, and this young lady right here is patiently holding her hand up, so let's hear what she has to say.
So tell me your name.
Hi, I'm Lexi, and I'm an
Hi, Lexi.
ACLU. Hi, I'm an ACLU Rights for All voter. I know you've committed to ending the Hyde Amendment. As president, how would you go about doing that?
Well, we gotta have a majority in the Senate. So that's kind of up to the folks here in Iowa. You got a Senate race coming up, right? Yeah. This is not up to the president alone. This is one of those things that's now part of our legislative basket. And we need not only to have control in the House, and you guys did a nice job on that. Thank you very much. But we're gonna take back control of the Senate as well. But I'm there. Okay?
Thank you.
Good. You bet. You bet, Lexi. Who else we got?
Okay, I see a lot of hands up. Sorry we can't call on all of you.
Can we do 2 more since Lexi was fast?
Certainly fine with me if you do
Okay.
2 more.
Okay.
Let's take that gentleman right there.
Thank you. I was really inspired by the need to be persistent.
Yes.
You're not going to win the Iowa caucus if you cannot deal with the farm bill, the farm issues. Okay, we want you to win the rural vote
Good.
and take it away from the Republicans who are so anti-farmer.
Yep.
We had a Democratic farm bill with the price floors set at 90% of parity. We have a living wage price floor, and it went down to 0. So while the rest of the country has a minimum wage at $7.25 an hour, we have 0.
Yep.
My family found 7-cent corn during the Great Depression when they went into the elevator. Okay, that's the kind of thing we can have.
What's the question? Yeah.
If you just give me a chance here, when people blame us for farm subsidies and we get less with farm subsidies, and so we're getting less and less and less. The New Deal farm bill was a Democratic Party farm bill. It took, it made the biggest corporations in the United States pay $1 trillion more to the farmers of the United States to bring us out of the Great Depression. And then starting in the 1960s, they dropped the price floor down under Republican pressure by about $4 trillion taken away from farmers and given to corporate agribusiness. So, I haven't heard you mention the Farm Bill here. You didn't mention it in Storm Lake. Can you be the leader on the Farm Bill?
Oh, but I did talk about it in Storm Lake. Yes, and I talked about it at the big rally, the farm rally.
It can't be antitrust. And knowing the farm prices, it has to include the Farm Bill, because it's a $4 trillion issue.
Okay, I think you've
Okay.
covered this
Good.
issue, and Elizabeth is...
No, look, you're right. We need a farm bill that is not about putting more money into the pockets of big ag. We need a farm bill that truly is a farm bill that has price supports in it. I understand this, and I get this, and I understand why this is important. I do want to say, though, that by itself is not going to be enough. In a world where antitrust laws are not enforced...
We need antitrust, that's great.
Okay, good. So we're in the same place then, but I'll say it to everybody here. It's also, we've got a terrible antitrust problem across this nation, and it's being felt in farm country as the number of seed suppliers shrink up. So the farmer is basically take it or leave it from just a handful of suppliers, and that means they jack up the price. Same thing on the other end. There are only a very limited now number of buyers of the commodities, and that puts the family farmer in the squeeze. Contract farming is yet another part of this. So we've got problems, but I'm gonna make a pitch. It goes back to the same problem of corruption.
It is.
The money that is felt in Washington is not coming from family farms. It's coming from big ag, and they're the ones who are calling the shots. That's why I start with, we have got to attack the corruption head on. We've got to disrupt that so that we can write laws again.
The last two farm bills are the worst in history, and Democrats have given up on farm bills, and that's too hard to do. We're going to give up on that one.
Well, I don't give up on anything as you are.
We need to move on. Appreciate
Okay.
the question, and we all know that farming is an important
It is.
topic in this area, so you can also probably get further information from Elizabeth for your question, further answers as we go. We're going to take one more because we want to get to the photos. I see about 15 hands up, so I'm going to take a question from Clara. Make it short, Clara, so we can get it.
Hi, Clara.
Hi, Senator, thank you for coming.
Elizabeth, please, come on.
Thank you for coming to Iowa. This is our first date, so I have a
Yes.
first date question.
Okay.
Okay?
Uh-huh.
Tell us your most admired novelist, political scientist,
Oh, Lord, jeez.
economist, and past president.
Oh, I don't think I can do this. I just do the latest one. No, I know.
You have 20 seconds to think about it.
Okay, I tell you what, I'm gonna give you my president.
There you go.
I'm gonna give you my president, and I'll tell you why. Okay, it's Teddy Roosevelt. It's Teddy Roosevelt. It's Teddy Roosevelt for two reasons. One is Teddy Roosevelt was the trust buster, right? Teddy Roosevelt was the one who came in and said enough with these giant corporations, and he took them on. And it didn't matter that people told him, you can't beat him. Boy, he waded straight into that fight. And here's one of the coolest parts. Go back and read Teddy Roosevelt. We're all taught the reason you've got to bust up the trusts is for economic reasons. Because when they own the railroads and they get to set prices, they prefer themselves, they knock other people out of business. Same thing in steel and so on and so forth. When you read Teddy Roosevelt, you know what he talks about? He says one of the main reasons to bust up the trusts is because they have too much political power. They get the rules rewritten in their favor. And that undercuts workers, it undercuts unions, it undercuts all of America and American democracy. So that's number one. Number two, for supporting why Teddy Roosevelt's my favorite, he's the one who established the national parks. He was our early environmental president and said this treasure belongs to all of us and that we all have a moral responsibility to take care of it going forward. So, I only gave you 1 out of 4, but I'll think about the others,
Let
I
me give you a
promise.
piece of information.
Yes.
There's a connection between Iowa and Massachusetts that you might want to know about.
What's that?
It's excuse me, Earl McGill from Muscatine, Iowa, was a young 19-year-old button maker in the button factories in Muscatine, and she became a union organizer. And she was so good and so eloquent that she was sent to Lawrence, Massachusetts as part of the textile workers. And brought back to Iowa the song, of course, Give Us Bread, but Give Us Roses. So I'm not going to let you off the hook.
Okay.
You have three unanswered. I want at least the most admired novelist.
No.
Clara,
Well, I'm
she'll,
sending you home with homework.
Okay.
yeah, that's good.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
She'll think about it and she'll respond to you
I
later.
will.
Very
I
good.
will.
Okay, that's it for questions,
So,
sorry.
so, you want to finish up, or I want to finish up?
Well, that's all the questions, but you go ahead and finish up, wrap
Okay.
up, because then we're gonna start photos. Photos will start from the front of the room, come up beside, not now, you go ahead and finish. You need to wrap up.
I will.
You wrap up and then we'll start photos. Anybody wants to stay for photos can do it. It's gonna take some time. If Elizabeth gets all the photos done and there's some time left to visit with some people or answer a few more questions, I'm sure she'll do it.
Okay, so let me say again, thank you, Larry. Thank you for doing this. Thank you. And I'm so grateful again to all of you for being here. Look, I just want to make a pitch about this. I'm serious about the three things I'm talking about attacking corruption so we really have a chance to make the changes we need to make, about rewriting a couple of the basic rules in our economy, and about our responsibility for protecting our democracy. I go back to Washington after my first trip to Iowa, and I talked to some of my colleagues in the Senate, and they say to me, you know, Elizabeth, you're asking for too much. This is too hard. Ask for something easier. You need to start with a couple of easy things, and you build up, and then you do some more. Don't ask for such hard things. Smile more. And the first time I heard this, I thought about it, and I thought, what do you think folks said to the abolitionists? They said, you know, it's just too hard. Give up now, because you're not going to change it. What did they say to the suffragettes? Yeah, smile more. To the suffragettes. They said, it is just too hard. Give up now. What did they say to the early union organizers? Too hard. Give up now. That's right. What did they say to the foot soldiers in the civil rights movement? Too hard. Give up now. What did they say to the LGBTQ activists who wanted equal marriage? Whoa. Too hard. Give up now. Never gonna happen. But none of them gave up. They got in the fight, they organized, they persisted, and they changed the course of American history. This is our chance to get in the fight, to get organized, to build a grassroots movement, and to change the course of American history. So be part of this. Dream big, fight hard, let's win.
All right, so for photos, it's going to start right